Historically, Sky TV, like many other pay TV operators, was primarily known for its sports and movie channels. But increasingly it's the entertainment services that define Sky in the customer's mind. And the executive leading the evolution of entertainment programming at Sky is Zai Bennett. Zai started his career in the mailroom at ITV franchise Carlton Television and progressed to Channel 5, ITV Digital, the BBC and eventually Sky. Along the way, his work has encompassed the best of British and international programming, and he has the BAFTAs to prove it. Zai and I talk TOWIE, talent and creating TV gold that's in a league of its own. Enjoy. Hi Zai, welcome to the pod.
Hey Danny, thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. I always like to start with a fun question to get the creative juices flowing. And my question to you is this. The Edinburgh TV Festival is well known for taking TV formats and doing them their own way. So in a world in which they have a TV executive version of League of Their Own, and you are asked to be a team captain, who would you choose to be on your team and who would you want to see on the other team?
That is a perfectly timed question because we have actually just announced a new team captain for a League of Their Own. Did you see that? We've got so Jill Scott's our new team captain, but she is not a TV exec. So let me think of some of them. On my team, I think I'd have a very toadying answer, which is my boss, Stephen Van Rooyen, because he'd insist on winning. So that's good. And I like winning. I think Jamie Morris, who I work with, has an encyclopedic knowledge of TV and film. So he'd be a very useful addition. And then if we're going to take on another team, let's take on a load of free-to-airs. So let's have Charlotte, Ben and Ian, because it'd be nice to beat the free-to-air lot. And I don't think they know a huge amount about sport. So we might win.
Okay, good. I like that. And on all levels.
Yeah, stacking it in my favour.
Absolutely. And why not? I always like to start with getting to know the extent to which my guests were really into TV when they were growing up.
I love TV. I always thought I wanted to work in TV. I had no idea how to, or what you had to do, or what possible jobs you could even do. You know, in terms of watching it, I was addicted. Watching like Harold Lloyd at 6 p.m. on the BBC Two, or the Sunday morning stuff, the retro stuff was Lost in Space, and then I'd watch the politics shows later on in the afternoon on Channel 4. Like this is all like growing up. Like Blackadder, massive. Young ones, they were brilliant. Amazing pieces of television to have sort of wash across you. And I was addicted, but I couldn't get a job at all. I applied to every graduate training scheme after I'd done after I'd been to uni and got a degree, and BBC production, ITN journalism, no joy. So I did a postgraduate degree and I did lots of temping to support myself during it. So lots of temp work. And one of the temp work jobs I got sent to by Manpower was at Carlton Television, 101 St Martin's Lane in the post room. And that's where I got caught a break.
And the mailroom has been an incredible launching pad for many people in the TV business. Particularly, you hear about these jobs that start out in the agents world in the US, for example. Was it a great training ground for starting out in TV in the UK and ultimately your first move, which was over to Channel 5 for the launch in 97?
I'm not sure you learn a ton specifically with the day-to-day duties of putting a letter in a mailbox. Although, I got to put David Cameron's mail in his mailbox. So sorry about that, everyone. But what you did do is you get to go around lots of different departments. And if you how old I'll be 21, 22, and really enthusiastic and trying to be really nice and polite, and you'd ask in every department, what do you guys do? Oh, how does it work here? And then, third or fourth question is, and are there any jobs going? And then eventually I used to have to go over to the London studios from 101, deliver the post between the two sites. And there's a thing called, that's where they had presentation, transmission, like the TX Live, all of that was over at the London studios for ITV. And there was a lady there called Wendy Chapman who ran a thing called presentation, which is scheduling idents and promos and how you sort of the schedule of the television channel going out. And she gave me a chance as a junior job there. And that's where it all kicked off from, sort of learning about all the bits and bobs that go into how a TV channel goes on air.
So it was Channel 5 in 97, and then back to ITV for the launch of their digital channels with a variety of roles over the course of the next 12 years across program strategy, acquisitions, which I think is where we met, ultimately becoming controller of ITV2 and then director of digital channels and acquisitions, which it was involved overseeing the full ITV digital channel portfolio. So that was amazing. Original content was clearly a differentiator for ITV2 in particular. Was it daunting to be given the responsibility for commissioning new shows like, let's say, Secret Diary of a Call Girl, which was quite genre defining and also genre challenging?
It was definitely channel defining, that show at the time. Over 12 years there, across a huge range of departments, you learn an awful lot. So there's a lot of training that's happened. Also, you're not carrying this on your own. You're not commissioning there on your own. There's a commissioning team. It's a team sport. So something like Secret Diary of a Call, Laura and Sally, who ran drama then, would be the commissioners, and I'd be working with them. So I'm defining what's the channel want, what we're trying to stand for. Trying to look for something that can, especially when you're in that, what was the sort of digital melee of channels, how do you stand out? So something with that provocative storytelling, that amazing, the really amazing talent, and up and coming writing. That's Lucy Prebble was writing that. Lucy's now obviously on Succession, and Susie for us, a phenomenal writer. So you're looking for people who are on the up as well. I think commissioning across the board it's a privilege, and you have to treat it like it's a privilege. And the way that I've seen really good commissioners, I've seen really bad commissioners. You don't make the show, right? You're commissioning the show, you're not making it. The best ones have robust conversations early on, and you just get everybody facing the same way. Because if there's any sort of doubt or muddling as you're going along, that's where things come unstuck. You don't want to be going, let's change the color from yellow to blue, or whatever niggly little things you could be getting into. You have to sort of be very self-controlled and think, what will my input here have the effect of? And if I'm going to have an input, it needs to be something meaningful. So am I going to make a double-digit percentage change to what you're doing? If I'm just tinkering, then don't. But I've seen the whole range of commissioners who are tinkerers who really want to make the show, to some of the best. Claudia Rosencrantz is one of the best commissioners I've ever seen. Virtually on her own, commissioned a slate of entertainment programs at ITV that was still on the air. Right.
And can you remember the pitch for the breakout hit "The Only Way Is Essex" that really helped to establish the structured reality genre in the UK?
Well, it was all part of defining ITV2. We never said guilty pleasure TV, because you don't want to tell people that, but that's sort of what we were offering. So there was a very clear brand that we were working within. And then that was a Channel 4 development. There was a casting tape for it, was what we had, and a pitch document, not that long. And the casting tape had Mark and Arj, and I'm struggling to remember everyone's name, Sam, had most of the key people you would remember from Series 1, for those people who do remember Series 1. And I watched it, and with Claire Zolker, our commissioning editor, and so we both went, well, these guys are sort of hypnotic, let's have a go. But we made a pilot, and we sort of tried to work out the ways of with so there's Tony Wood, there's Ruth Wrigley. Tony used to make Corrie, so he was brilliant at narrative storytelling. Ruth used to make Big Brother, so she knew how to make reality. And it was a slightly different way of making it, because we were we were setting it up to be made in this contemporaneous way, where you would film for 3/4 of the week, edit, and then have 2 episodes in that week from the week, and then a rolling system that kept doing that. So we got the pilot back, and Claire and I watched it, and we both went, I don't know what this is, but I'd happily watch another one. So let's give it a go. And the big thing for it being successful, apart from that, brilliantly produced, put together, amazing casting, putting the rules in place that gave the world structure was really important. But the biggest thing, I think, was then also getting the whole of ITV, virtually the whole of ITV, behind it. And I can't even remember how we did it, but basically you're a commissioner, so you're buying, right? But you're also selling. You're selling internally at the channel, at the service. So Claire and I just had to sell our asses off and get marketing to put proper money behind it, get loads of promos on ITV1 as it was then, and it launched big, and it had to launch big and then it wasn't the kind of thing that I think can grow like a scripted comedy can grow. This needed to sort of announce itself, and it did that. It had all the elements from that very first. Once you just saw those guys on tape, went, yeah, there's something here. You just know, you get a sort of tingle. You're going to go, yeah. There's plenty of ways you can mess it up along the way, plenty of ways, but that one luckily came good.
And another one that came good, I think, was Celebrity Juice, and that's another one from that era. Does that demonstrate the importance of nurturing talent relationships that can pay a long-term dividend?
Yeah, totally. Lee had done Avid Marion stuff, and that was very popular, and he'd taken it so far with Channel 4. He was looking to do other characters, and they weren't interested in his other characters. Then he brought Keith Lemon to us with John Knoll, with his then agent, and we did a show called The Gap Year, where he went away and met famous people all around the world. I've still got a postcard that Lee sent me from when he was making the show, which is a picture of him next to some sort of scantily clad model on top, both with an open top car, and him just saying thanks for the free holiday. But that show we made, which was 6.5 hours, it was called Keith Lemon's Gap Year, meant that Lee could find the character, work out the rules of the character and how he really wanted to work it. And then the next show he wanted to do with that character was Celeb Juice with Dan, who sort of conceived it with Lee. And then, yeah, so sticking with Lee and letting that develop, that's where Juice came from. And Juice itself still took a lot of rigorous work from that whole talkback team, did a brilliant job on it, because it had we did loads of run-throughs, loads of games, design, working in rules of the world. So it's Keith Lemon's world, and Holly and Fern inhabited it for 45 minutes. And in that world, it's a bit un-PC, and this, certain things can happen, certain things can't. How far would Lee go? Again and again, you sticking with, not just sticking with, but we're having the trust and a relationship. It takes a long time, so you want to then keep using that if you can. That can be true of writers, directors, as well as more obviously with comedic talents on Sky, like now with Rob and Rom, and Romesh does an awful lot for us, and we have great relationships with those guys, and a variety of different shows come from it in different genres.
So in April 2011, you moved to the BBC. How was that first experience of the BBC as an exec in a non-commercial environment, having really focused up until that point on commercial stuff? And also, I guess, the extra publicity and public scrutiny that comes with that role, because the BBC and anything to do with the BBC is very high profile.
It really is. Even today, I find it weird. There's a Wikipedia page for me because I worked at the BBC, for no other reason than because I worked at the BBC. And that, I remember I'd done controller sessions at Edinburgh, right? TV festival for ITV. They were quite jolly. You get asked a few searching questions, but it was fine. You're there to sort of set out your stall and try to help inform producers and what you want them to sort of bring you. The BBC, you walk in and the front row is full of journalists, and you got the Paul Revoirs or the Colin Robertsons, and it's the Mail, the Telegraph, the Express, and they're all sitting there just leaning forward going, say something, go on, just say one thing that I can get you on. So there's that aspect of it, but then there's also the organisation itself, and certainly in its commissioning and programming sections of it, which are some of the most creatively unencumbered and free and therefore creative places I've ever experienced. At the time when I was there, Janice was running BBC Two, Richard was running BBC Four, Danny was running One, and the breadth of shows and things that they were creating and working with people, brilliant people on, was immense. So it is an amazing creative place, and when it works well, it works brilliantly. It does also have a tendency to trip over itself. It can't help itself. But when I think about launching a show like Our War or Life and Death Row, getting all the BBC inline working, so online, radio, TV, to promote really important factual programming for young adults, they did that. They became hits. They won awards. And that's because every section of sometimes with a fair wind and a bit of luck and a lot of cajoling, you could get it to point in the same direction. But it's a hell of a it's a lot of there's a lot of cat herding at the BBC.
And that breadth, I guess, was also one of the interesting things about the role, because you had shows, as you mentioned, like Life and Death Row, comedies like Bad Education, Cuckoo, People Just Do Nothing, popular factual hits like The Call Centre. I mean, that's a very broad canvas. And in hindsight, was that breadth of genre so important for what you do now, for example, at Sky?
Definitely, it's why I wanted to go there. I desperately wanted that job. I thought it would be a brilliant job, and it was. With ITV, we'd done a little bit of ITV2, that is, sorry, for example, we'd done a little bit of drama and a decent amount of entertainment and reality. And they were also ITV was sort of top of the game for entertainment. So I think I'd learned so much from all the amazing practitioners there. But the BBC gives you a chance with, as you said, primarily BBC Three for me then was comedy and factual were the two things that we did a lot of. So yeah, that breadth was incredibly important. It's also has set me up for being able to do what I do now at Sky. But we made crazy shows like The Revolution Be Televised, which was a sort of a comedy hit show where they did pranks on politicians. I remember I had Conservative Central Office and Lord this and Lord that on the phone complaining. But my boss at the time, George Entwistle, was brilliant at being protective and saying, well, as long as you're doing it the right way, carry on. And that show won a BAFTA as well. It was a brilliant show. We did a live Bollywood Carmen in Sheffield on the BBC Three. It's like just stuff that just sounds bonkers, but was brilliant.
So in August 2014, you moved to Sky to become director of Sky Atlantic. How did you find the move to Sky? Because having come from ITV and BBC, those are in many ways, and perhaps more so than were the broadcasting establishment, and Sky was a little bit more at that stage the outsider. How was that move, and how's the culture evolved over the time that you've been there?
Well, there's a lot of similarities to the BBC and Sky because they're big. They're both big. But Sky's currently we've got 20-something thousand employees. Like I say, it's a big organisation across lots of territories. It's complicated. It can be complicated. BBC is big and can be complicated. I think some of the differences are when you get into most divisions of Sky. So if I look at the marketing teams or the PR teams, they're best in class, right? There's amazing machines here in every section of Sky. I think the BBC was a bit more sprawling, a bit more haphazard. I think the core of the BBC is the creative core is world class, but at Sky every single bit is sort of the Rolls Royce version. I also think Sky, obviously I've been here. It sounds not that long, it's nearly a decade, but actually there's people who've been here a lot longer, and in that time I think it's retained the thing that I found attractive, which was the entrepreneurial spirit. That is at the heart of it. Even though we are, probably a top 10, top 15 company in the UK, it still feels like we feel like the outsider and we're having a go. And that is really powerful. The machines here and the way that it works is that if there's something big we want to do, it's really good at doing it and doing it fast. But it's got to be something juicy. So, from Sky Plus to Sky Q, you've now got Sky Glass. We launched Sky Protect. We've got Sky Mobile. It hasn't stopped. It's a relentless pace, and you've got to be the kind of person who loves that.
And how would you characterize the difference in approach in all aspects between producing and broadcasting programs for viewers, which was the paradigm that you were doing at ITV and BBC, for example, and then subscribers, which is the Sky model? And that's across the programming that you make, that you buy, that you market, how you promote the shows, how you package them. It's I guess a slightly different approach.
It is different. You run the channels differently. I think when you take the sort of macro view on it, it's about pay TV is fairly self-defining, right? It's got to be something that someone's willing to pay for, which probably means it's got to be something that it definitely means they have to value it, which is it something that they're going to talk about, recommend? Do they put it in their favorites of the month of the year? And we do tons of research with their customers, right? They're not viewers, they're customers. They're buying a thing off us. We do loads of work with them about what they value, what they don't value, and we know the sorts of genres they think to them are more important. So American and US drama is really, so US drama and UK drama really important to them. They love documentary, love factual. They don't think that competitive competition reality show is pay TV. They can see loads of that on free TV. It's also a thing they watch with the kids before bedtime or something. That's not what they're paying for the service for. They're paying for a service for. I'm not talking about all of them, this because there's a huge array of customers and we have different need states, but they would say, I'm paying for this service for a treat after I put the kids to bed for me. We make sure there is something in the, for everyone in the home across the service, but that doesn't mean everybody loves everything. Whereas sometimes you're at the BBC, for example, you are trying, especially at BBC One, for example, you are trying to do something that's trying to get everybody, which means you're knocking the edges off of a lot of stuff, right? Whereas we're very specific, and we're very specific within our individual brands, right? Sky Atlantic is the TOWIE grown-up adult drama service, right? It's going to be challenging. It's going to be no clear hero, no clear villain, anti-heroes. It's sort of messed up telly. And it's got a very clear brand about it. We try to make sure that our documentary services, every time we make or buy a doc, we're aiming for it to be the definitive doc on that subject. We're not doing current affairs. We're not making panoramas. We're not making that sort of level of show. We're making narrative-based factual programming that probably takes a year or 2 years to make and costs a few million quid. Like it's a different sort of storytelling. So we're very clear about what customers value, and then we have to then aim ourselves at it. And then, sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not, but you have to have enough swings at success.
The Sky Atlantic was, and I guess still is, dominated by acquired programming. Is it a world that you've always enjoyed being in? And have you seen it evolve? Because it has gone through a number of changes, even recently, studios launching their own direct-to-consumer services, which has a knock-on effect in what becomes available in the market, what the LA screenings looks like, all of those elements.
It's changed enormously. Yeah, like the LA screenings, for example, this year you're sitting down with Warner Brothers and you might watch 4-5 shows, whereas you would be in for a full day, 6 dramas, 8 comedies, whatever, beforehand, because they were populating so many more services, network services, and they were doing that sort of thinned down. D2C means there's not so much for sale, although that's coming round the corner again, and DTCs are obviously all looking at their business models and how they make money, and there's huge moves and changes happening again. That market's opening up again. I think the other thing we look at when we work with, and we co-produce a lot with the US as well, is it's the way of doing it and what you're making. So the sort of Chernobyls and Landscapers and Catherine the Greats and the things we co-produced with HBO, they feel like they were, and they probably still are, a cut above what you would ever get domestically. They're also mostly we sort of err on the side of Britishness, whether that be the casting or the writing or the production team. Chernobyl was obviously not a British story, but it's a British production team. It's British talent through and through it. So the other thing you get from working so closely and being steeped with American TV and HBO specifically, I'd say, is there is a rigor and an ambition, because I'd still put them as possibly the gold standard for the whole of the planet, right? Obviously, there's great stuff that comes from lots of places, but consistency, they're probably still the winner. And getting close-ish to some of that rubs off really well for us, and especially as a pay TV operator.
So as you say, original content is really the name of the game for you and for the platform. I mean, it's clearly crucial for Sky going forward. I had former Sky COO Mike Darcy on as a guest on the podcast, and he talked about original content always being the long-term strategic aim of Sky, to get greater control over its own content destiny and become less reliant on external rights holders. And in many, if not the majority of cases, the original content that you've commissioned delivers the highest ratings on the services. So does that make your role and what you and your team do even more important as the guardian of non-news, non-sport entertainment programming for the platform?
Well, I think what we do is really important. They are often the totems, the things that we coalesce around and we market and we brand the services on, right? We're putting all of our colors on those masts. So those are at the heart of our content strategy. We're really proud how well loved they are by our customers. They are viewed brilliantly as well. We work really well with Sky Studios making the scripted stuff. My team make all of the local factual and the entertainment stuff. There's a few aspects of taking US programming. Look, great, you get more dollars on screen probably for than what you're paying, but you don't decide when that's commissioned or decommissioned. And also you don't decide how much, if there's a fierce competitive element, that you may end up paying a lot more money for that, right, over the time. So you want to have a nice hybrid mix of supplies of content. You don't want to be over reliant on any single one of them. So it's just very sound business, but it's what customers want. And that the other thing that's been drilled into me in the past decade here, relentlessly and correctly, is it's all about, if you think about the customer, if that's the first thing you're thinking about and the last thing you think about in any decision, you'll be fine. If you do that, whatever you think, it's going to work out okay. And that's something from Jeremy, that's something from Stephen. That's throughout this organization. Everyone here will talk about that, and it works.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I guess the corollary of all of that is that the platform and the nature of Sky is changing. It has traditionally been synonymous with satellite technology, for example, which is really great for mass broadcasting, and therefore sport in particular has a natural home in some senses on the platform, because it's all about the live and all about the immediacy. But in an OTT world and the evolving nature of what Sky does with all of the new technology and digital distribution, it feels like entertainment is more of a definer of the service and more of a battleground than it's ever been, because of its ability to be sticky, to bring people back. So is that something that you feel, that the focus is a bit more now on how entertainment programming can really define the Sky customer proposition?
I think it already does. I think Chernobyl was a big step in that when we launched that show and it won a lot of awards, perception caught up with reality, and people were like, oh yeah, you do make stuff, oh yeah, it is good. And actually behind that show there's a ton of other shows in a ton of other genres, plus we've then rolled out being more front-footed in factual and nature and other such areas. So I think we already did do that. Thought's always going to be really, really important at Sky, right? Let's not pretend that it's all about entertainment programming only. It's a huge thing for us. The overall package, I love it when we do promos and we put Sky Sports, Sky Cinema, Sky Kids, and Sky Ents all together. You kind of go, all right, that's why it's not Netflix. That's why it's so much. That's why it's so good and so expansive and the best of every single one of those things. And that brings it back to life. You're right. Entertainment's obviously is the battleground currently with the other streamers. I think we're in a good place in that battleground. We're making more local shows than they are, right? And local top end scripted with Sky Studios, and that's where we're gonna win by being local, by knowing our customers better. If I look across at Netflix, at Amazon's, even Apple's, there's some great shows on there. There's great shows, but how many of them feel like British, like Gangs of London does? Not that many. And I think that's our sweet spot, and that's what we've got to keep mining. It's pretty straightforward. We've got to keep the rack rate high. We've got to make the quality. It's all about if we can try and always be best in class in whatever sort of thing we're making. Great. There's Britishness in it. Brilliant. I think the red thread that joins all of our stuff up, all of our shows and all of our genres, Sky's entertaining. So even if we make a really dark, a drama about child abuse, or about like Save Me Was, or about Patrick Melrose, which is about substance abuse and child abuse, there are entertaining moments in those shows. There's wit, there's fun. Whereas I know if Channel 4 made one of those two shows, it might be relentlessly gritty and wearing its messaging on its sleeve. Whereas we have an entertainment underbelly for everything, sometimes really overt, like Rob and Rom or League of Their Own or Buzzcock. They're overtly really entertaining. Our comedy is really entertaining, but I think there's that red thread under everything. Sky always stands for entertainment. And then the other thing we've got to do is try to always culturally resonate, and that's hard when you're in pay TV, because you're naturally, not everybody has it, but you've just got to do this. You've got to try and get those shows that get talked about. So, you know, the way that the balletic violence of gangs of London elevated it and became a cultural phenomenon. Having Succession, obviously we don't make that show, but the weight of PR about that show by season 3 was unignorable. So it became a hit. It's about creating that talkability.
So to quote my old friend Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. I use the term friend loosely, of course. Part of what comes with executive success is greater management responsibility and team leadership. How would you characterize your approach to managing people, building a team in a culture that's evolving at a very fast pace, whether it's more remote working, changing expectations about office culture, inclusiveness, leadership? How do you approach these issues?
I like all things, I oversimplify them, and I find that's a good starting point generally. And I think that, like I said earlier, running these services, making shows, all of these things, they're a team sport. Like the amount of people involved in making a show is immense. It's 500 people on a set of a decent sized drama, and to do that effectively, I think my sort of MO is leading from the front. So I'm just really clear about what we want, what I want, what we want. It's rigorously researched. It's not just off the top of my head. We've investigated with customers a lot. Bring that to life. Have some rules. Have some clear parameters, and then trust people. And I've got a brilliant team who all know what they're doing. They're all sort of award-winning program filmmakers in their own right. There's Poppy, there's Phil, there's Megan, John, Lucy, Julia, Katie. They run all the different genres and that we have. And you've got to have a constructive, creative conversation with them. So it's never my taste, right? It cannot be. It would be really boring, and no one would want to watch it. But it has to be. So, but you have to give people creative headroom. But my job is about quality control, being the sort of referee, and making sure that we stick to what the customer wants. And I'm there to keep reminding people that. But sometimes you've got to let people have a punt, and you've got to build into your systems and the way you fund things room for some of that. Like if I was so rigorous as to stick to our strategy all the time, we wouldn't have commissioned Chernobyl, because I read it on a plane with Anne Mintzer, and she and I said, "Oh, we're not really doing." We said we'd only do pure British stuff, didn't we? Yeah. Oh, we better. It's come from Jane Featherstone, who's an amazing producer. You should read it, Zai. So I read it, got off the plane, and said, "It's really good. We should just do it, shouldn't we?" And she's like, "Yep, good. I'm glad you said that. You're right." So you've got to break your own rules sometimes, but I've got a brilliant team, and mostly it's about me just enabling them.
And in terms of your experience and your career today, if you were to give your younger self, or maybe the next generation of executives, a piece of advice on how to thrive in this TV world, what would that be?
Don't rush. Be on time. I think there's also people who are quite can be quite snooty about sort of low art, high art, and all this jazz. David Liddeman's someone I really admire. I thought he did an amazing job at ITV. He cared as much about Corrie as he did about a Paul Greengrass drama, that's Bloody Sunday that he was making. But he also had a mass entertainment channel that had both those things on, right? That's class for you, and you can achieve it because there's quality in all of it. And looking for that quality is the main thing.
So having said that, the channels and the programming is not necessarily your taste, I am actually going to give you the opportunity to give us an insight into what that would look like if it was all about you. So if you were offered the chance to put a Zai Bennett tile on an SVOD menu, and that's actually, if you think about it, not that strange a concept to imagine might happen, which 5 TV series that you were involved in making, commissioning, or buying would you choose for what I think we may call now Zai TV?
Well, first of all, I did suggest we rebrand it to Zai Atlantic when I joined, but they didn't go for it. So I like this a lot. I think the merchandising team at Sky will say that I probably already do have rails like this for me, so that's also fine. But if the parameters are that I have to have been involved in them, then what's like that? Chernobyl is an amazing piece of telly and a pivotal point for Sky's creative journey, I think. So that should be on there. I mentioned the revolution would be televised from the BBC days because I just thought it was brilliant that the BBC Three got away with making a hit show on this is a show where George Osborne was Chancellor of the Exchequer and he was given a GCSE maths textbook by the guys on his way to deliver the Mansion House speech. It took a lot of getting through the BBC world, so I was proud of that. TOWIE is a show that could be on there, but I sometimes think I should probably go and have a shower after thinking about TOWIE. Have we done a good thing for society or not? And The Affair was a fantastic drama, one of the first dramas I bought at Sky, and I have a soft spot for it, for the show itself, but also what it was doing, why we bought it. Because what we bought it because it helped Sky Atlantic define itself as more than just sort of visceral stabbing dramas. But there's a lot of violence on Sky Atlantic when I joined. It was felt very heavily male. The Affair showed us and showed the rest of the business that you could have something that was slightly more female friendly and still super high quality, slightly challenging and interesting storytelling, and helped us stretch Sky Atlantic out a little bit more, which was an important journey to be on. Trying to think of another one. I think I've always got a soft spot for Cuckoo because we started with Andy Samberg. I think Greg Davis is one of the funniest people in the world. And that was and just being close to any of them, and Taylor Lautner, who took over they were all just a joy to be around.
Very good. Well, Zai, thanks for being a guest on the podcast. It's been a fascinating insight into your world. At Sky, I think they say believe in better, but for this episode, I think at the very least the tagline will be believe in Bennett.
I'll try and sell that in as well. Danny, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.